Speak quickly, Outlander.
There's a ghost story on the island I live on, and it goes like this. Pastor Jensen in Byrum wanted to go to Østerby one day, and he wanted to go by carriage. But since he didn't have one himself, or a horse for that matter, he went next door to Søren Krobæk and asked if he could drive him. Søren said that his girl Else could do it if she was up for it, and she was, and off they went. By the time Pastor Jensen had tended to the matters that needed tended to in Østerby, the sun had set and night had fallen. On their way back home, they spotted something going on in the distance. The specters were out to play on Bisbo, the main bridge connecting the eastern part to the western part of the island. Else asked the pastor if they could take a shortcut and drive alongside the beach until they could reach another bridge and cross there, to avoid going through the haunted spot so that the horses wouldn't get spooked. But the pastor said no, and Else begged, but he was firm and said no. I want to drive on the road. Moments after saying this, the horses reared and screamed, but when Else looked out to see what scared them out on the road, there was just nothing there except that same unease that always surrounded the bridge. The pastor got off and he removed the fourth wheel and threw it into the bed of the carriage, and then they drove over Bisbo and all the way back home without further incident. The day after, the pastor showed up at Søren Krobæk's farm and put the wheel back on. It's been questioned how the carriage managed to get all the way back with only 3 wheels, and if the story was true, but Else insists to the day she died that it was. There are a lot of things I really love about this story. It of course reinforces the age-old myth that waterways have mystical powers, and that priests are capable of bending reality to their will, like the pastor does when he removes the fourth wheel of the carriage and it's still able to just go on unhindered. And lastly, that the story takes place in a location that no one knows where is. So Bisbo doesn't appear on any modern maps, but I think if we examine the story, we can find the clues we need to find the actual physical location where the story took place. So let's try and do that. Come with me on a quest to find the Lost Ghost Bridge. Pastor Jensen would have lived up here behind me near the church, and Søren Krobæk would have lived at the farm that bears his namesake, Krobækgård, over here. Else and the pastor went to Østerby, which is over on the eastern side of the island, so they must have been coming from that direction when making their way back home. My initial theory was that they must have made it all the way to the southern end of the island and taken a shortcut there, because there is a bridge near my town that everyone knows gives off a bit of a weird vibe. But then one day I was reading a book about life on a farm in the 1800s. It's told from the perspective of someone who was a young man at the time of the events, and the book is a collection of his memories of life growing up on the island. During one of his stories, he's accompanying some men on a rescue mission to save the crew of a beached ship, which was a common occurrence on the island due to its location and the many reefs surrounding it. After the rescue operation, it is too dark for the men to find their way home, and they're too tired anyways, so they seek shelter at a farm nearby where they dock their boats. And early in the morning, the narrator is then sent home by his father so that he can inform his mother of what has happened. And during the trip, he mentions taking a different route home, so he doesn't have to go over something that he refers to as that bridge. The rescue operation happened here, east of Østerby. The narrator lived in June over here, so that bridge would have been between these 2 points. And I think that's the same bridge that Else and the pastor drove over, and therefore not located where I thought it was down south on the island. But there isn't a bridge on that stretch of road. Or is there? Post-World War II, it was decided that every place in our kingdom should be like everywhere else. That meant that animals would be imported to regions where they couldn't naturally migrate to on their own. Trees would be planted where they normally didn't grow, and the smallest town and the biggest city would have equally well-maintained roads. And in the 1960s, that meant that the main road on the island, stretching from the west coast to the east coast, got upgraded to a nicely paved 2-lane highway road. So what if Bisbo got paved over, and that's why it no longer appears on any of our modern maps? I then ordered every map of the island I could find in the Royal Archive from the 1700s to the 1960s, and I started poring over them, and then nothing. But then maybe. There is a bridge where I thought there would be one on a map from 1939, but it's not called Bisbo. It's called Bisbo, named after the bay area where it's located. But could that be it? I think so, because let's go back to Ilse. I learned about her when I was reading a book that was written by her descendant. And in the book, there's a passage when he is explaining who she is, where he goes over a little funny detail. Apparently, Ilse's last name, or middle name I think it was often written incorrectly. It was written as Byrsted, even though her name was Bjørnsdatter, which means daughter of Bjørn, which was the common way of naming your children back then. The author theorizes that the reason that Ilse's name got mixed up was that she had a very thick island accent, so Bjørnsdatter sounded like Bjørnstad to whoever wrote down the county records at the time. And having lived here and heard the island accents, I can totally see that happening. Syllables around here are very optional, and most words eventually just degenerate until they become a single guttural sound. And this is an island where the main town on the island, its original name literally translates to town, because why make a big deal out of what to name a town? And you might not even be able to tell that the words I am saying are any different, because apparently, according to the bard Olafur, Danish sounds like if you gave a fart grammar, and I can only agree. So where were we? Right, Bollesbo. I think that Bollesbo is actually Boesbo. It just sounded like Bollesbo to the person who wrote down Ilse's story in the 1800s. And wouldn't you know it, if you look on Google Street View, there is a bridge where Boesbo used to be. So could that be it? It is not the same bridge. It must have been rebuilt when they built the bicycle lane going from Børum to Østerby, but it is in a location where Boesbo used to be on the 1939 map. And I'm surprised that it's not only the bike lane that has a bridge, but the road itself is also a bridge. You just can't tell when you're driving over it. I jump into the creek and I start heading south from the bridge to see if I can spot the place where Ilse wanted to cross instead of going over the main bridge. And a couple hundred meters later, I find a spot that would have been perfect for a shortcut to get to Kråbegård faster. I think this would be the very spot. Because you have Boel over there, and you have Børum over there. The hauntings only occur at night, and while I haven't been back since finding this place, I have driven over it several hundred times, both by car and also by bicycle. I did go to a party at a cabin nearby, and the cabin had a bit of a weird vibe. So I think it's maybe the general area that kind of feels a bit spooky. Initially, it did also look like there could be a grave burrow sort of like near where the cabin was, but upon further inspection, it just looks like when they've been clearing out the ditch nearby, that's like the refuge from that, and that has been building up over a while. It's like this little pile that kind of looks like a burrow. And also I am obsessed with grave burrows, so I'm seeing them everywhere even though they aren't there. So while I can't confirm one way or another whether or not the spot is haunted, I can confirm that this is indeed the legendary bridge from local folklore Bollesbo. And it is interesting that, like so many other things around here, it has managed to stay hidden in completely plain sight, and only so because of a bad translation. But yeah, anyways, thank you for coming with me on the epic quest to find the lost ghost bridge. I hope you've had fun watching me. I've had fun finding the place, and until I see you again, bye bye. Driving into the storm.